Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. The Associated Press. Who does Trump see as enemies from within? Then USA Today, Trump to prosecute hundreds. Now, he's not going to prosecute hundreds. He'll probably indict a number of people through special counsels, except this time, people will have broken the law. They say that Trump broke the law. That's why he was indicted. Well, now the shoe is on the other foot. The tables have turned. You underestimated Trump, his ability to come back. He's like a phoenix. He's the Obi-Wan Kenobi of politics. They tried to go after him in a purely partisan manner. Hit subscribe to this channel, and that is illegal. It is illegal to deliberately try to take down your political opponent. There are numerous statutes. Very likely that certain Democratic politicians or prosecutors possibly broke. Hit subscribe to this channel. Let's get to President Trump right now. We will talk about this. He's not going to go after anyone who didn't break the law. Just like Democrats didn't go after anyone who didn't break the law, apparently, allegedly. Hit subscribe. Let's listen to President Trump.
We have two enemies. We have the outside enemy, and then we have the enemy from within. And the enemy from within, in my opinion, is more dangerous than China, Russia, and all these countries, because if you have a smart president, he can handle them pretty easily. I got along great with all. I handled them. But the thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Shifty Schiff. Think of this guy's going to be a senator. He's running against a guy that doesn't understand politics at all, Garvey, but he was a good baseball player. But he doesn't understand politics at all. Adam Shifty Schiff, who's a total sleazebag, is going to become a senator. But I call him the enemy from within. When you look at the danger he put our country in, potentially with Russia, with a phony made-up deal that he made up with Hillary and some bad people, that started off as an excuse for why she lost an election that a lot of people thought she should have won, because the polls indicated she might win, and then she got beaten everywhere, virtually. When you look at that, and then they said, it was Russia. They used it as an excuse. And then the fake news picked it up. And while you're on this, let's talk about the single greatest scandal, in my opinion, in broadcast history. 60 Minutes and CBS interviewed Kamala, and she's incompetent. She gave them the dumbest answer anyone's ever heard. So they took that answer out, threw it, or the whole answer they threw out, and they took another answer that she gave to a totally different question and inserted it. And supposedly they did this a number of times.
Van Jones on CNN recently stated that Trump acts and behaves in this boorish and belligerent and it's not presidential. And imagine if someone else acted like Trump. Democrats don't have to defend themselves in the manner that Trump defends himself. People at CNN, The Washington Post, The New York Times, MSNBC, The Atlantic, I can name you 50 other publications, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, there is a concerted, unified, overt public relations monstrosity every second of the day, defending Democrats, insulting, demeaning conservatives in disingenuous hit pieces. They don't have to act like Trump. So when Van Jones or Maddow or others throughout media say Trump, he insults people. Democrats insult and demean and disparage people every single day through hit pieces, through disingenuous investigative journalism that only is leveled at conservatives and Republicans. When was the last time CNN or the Washington Post or the New York Times did an expose on Hunter's laptop? There was, if anything, 50 intel officials lied through their teeth, and it was censored. Trump doesn't have that luxury. Oh my God, so he's mean. Oh my God, so he's belligerent. He's a one-man media wrecking ball. And people who bring up his behavior, his personality, he's unpresidential. Well, He's a one-man media machine going up against a very disingenuous, dishonest media apparatus that is firmly, and we know this from the Gallup polls, and 20 to 30% of Americans, only 20 to 30% of Americans trust media because they're firmly in the pocket or in the tank for the Democratic Party. It's the ladies at The View. It's, The Daily Show. Like I said, late night comedians, Saturday Night Live. So when people ever tell you, oh, I don't like he's mean and he insults people. Yeah, the biggest fear that every conservative or anyone should ever have, or I shouldn't say fear, there's nothing to fear, but the biggest concern is an email from a wonderful, morally superior liberal journalist at the usual publication that says just doing a report, just doing an article on you, wanting to reach out. In other words, we're writing a hit piece to disparage and demean and be dishonest and disingenuous and lie by omission. We want to ruin you. Want to see if you want to reach out and give us your side before we completely take you down in our publication. They do not do that to people at CNN or celebrities that fall in line. They don't do that. Anyone who had a difference of opinion with the quote-unquote fabricated consensus was demeaned, kicked off of Twitter, marginalized, excommunicated. I mean, you can go on forever. Anyone who supports Trump, friends have disowned, liberal friends of mine have disowned me. Why? I mean, I still have friends who are liberal, but there's 10 lifelong friends. Why? Because it's literally, and I still love them, but they disowned me for the only sin is I wanted a better foreign policy. That's why you go from Bernie Sanders to Trump. If you lack the intellect or lack the knowledge to understand why I or millions of people voted a Democrat and then voted Trump, don't blame the people. Blame your lack of understanding or lack of education or lack of intellect or lack of knowledge. That's on you if you don't understand why people vote for Trump. That's not on the Trump supporters or voters. That's on you. But it's like a cult. And then they say Trump is mean. Good. God bless him. God bless Trump. Fighting against an entire public relations monstrosity that literally exists at this moment just to take down Trump and anyone who supports him.
And they got caught. 60 Minutes. And CBS should lose their license for that.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brad.
Let's listen to that again.
And they got caught. 60 Minutes. And CBS should lose their license for that.
It is not difficult. If you have a special counsel, you subpoena documents, you demand witness testimony in Congress, it is not difficult to see and to inquire and to investigate whether late-night comedians coordinate with the Democratic Party. It's probably almost certain that they do. That very likely is an FEC violation. There are numerous examples of collusion, to borrow a word which was an obsession of Democrats that was another hoax. They just believe in complete nonsense and completely delusional fantasy. People who are in media and communicate directly with the Democratic Party are giving free advertising to Democrats. That is against the law. There's so many things that have been done against Trump that's against the law. Indicting him in New York under statutes that have never been used is against the law. There's no precedent for any of these things. There needs to be some precedent before you continually go after Trump.
But I'm just wondering if these outside agitators will start up on election day. Let's say you win. I mean, let's remember you've got 50,000 Chinese nationals in this country in the last couple of years. Yeah. You have people on the terrorist watch, murderers.
What's happening in Rolfred as he spends most of his day sleeping. I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within, not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of election day. I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
What he's saying is very simple. If you were an organization paid or funded by organizations or by operatives or by any link to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, if you're a conservative organization linked by Republican operatives, or if you're a liberal organization funded by Democratic Party or operatives, and you cause property damage or worse, Trump is going to take out the National Guard. What is wrong with that? I thought after January, we had to protect our democracy. It was an assault on democracy. Democrats stood by every day for an entire summer where there were curfews, where there was property damage throughout the country in major cities. 19 lives lost, according to Wikipedia, in Trump's last year in office. And they said nothing, and they focused on one day. And it's like, are you delusional? I mean, how utterly indoctrinated do you have to be? There was even a book written in defense of, we'll just use the word property damage. And Democrats were okay. They were bailing out people, destroying vehicles with incendiaries. 2 law students, I believe. I think they were let off the hook. I forgot exactly. You can look it up. In New York, I believe there were 2 protesting law students who threw incendiaries at a vehicle, completely obliterated the vehicle. I think it was a police vehicle also. And Democrats said nothing. Liz Cheney, Kinzinger, none of them shed a tear over the entire summer of endless property damage and mayhem and chaos, and them going after the White House when Trump was there.
Because they can't let that happen.
Following my interview, Democrats and many mainstream.
Paul, thank you so very much as always. Job for 9. I'm not sure about Ron Paul. Hopefully Rand Paul will be part of, will lead or be a huge part of his administration. Not sure about Ron. Thank you so very, very much. I could be wrong. Thank you for watching for so long. Paul Bartlett, as always, thank you. To my super chat, thank you. If you're new to this channel, hit subscribe.
Mainstream media outlets constructed their own political narrative without including the full context of the Q&A about outside agitators on Election Day. Among the media outlets that ran misleading headlines, NPR, Vanity Fair, The Guardian.
I used to read all of these publications in 2014. In fact, I used to love reading The Nation. I used to love the Washington Post was fantastic. I used to love reading Esquire, Vanity Fair. Christopher Hitchens used to write in these publications. They never really cared that much about, picking a specific political side. They might have always been more left-leaning, but never really cared that much. Now they're public relations monstrosities for the Democratic Party. It's just, that's why would you read? That's why, unfortunately, and I don't want any journalists to lose their jobs, their livelihood. I don't want anyone to be laid off. But why do you think there are massive layoffs ahead and in the recent past within media? Why? In the chat, why do you think there are layoffs in all of these publications? Why do you think the Washington Post or New York Times readership or CNN's viewership, why do you think they're all dwindling? In the chat, let me know. I can tell you it's a rhetorical question. Why would you read Vanity Fair or NPR or The Guardian when you can go to The Atlantic and get an even better fabricated story about how Trump wants to sell the planet to Martians? Why would you read the Washington Post when you could read the New York Times about the latest attempt of Trump to, devour Santa Claus and sell Alaska to the Kremlin? Why would you read any of these publications as opposed to reading the other that say the same thing? I mean, they say the same thing about Trump all the time. Trump terrible, Trump, and they lost the popular vote. They're doubling down. They will never, ever stop, which is better for Trump. I want them to continue with the never-ending vitriol and outrage. J.D. Vance, 8 years. J.D. Vance, 8 years. I told you for the past 4 years Trump would return and regain the Oval Office. I'm telling you right now, Trump does a good job. Vance does a good job because Vance is 99% going to win in 2028. If you don't know that, you heard it here first. Vance 99% will win because Democrats are not capable of changing. I can tell you this. I was a lifelong Democrat until like 7 years ago.
And many others. And this is how the interview was covered on television. Watch this.
In a Fox News interview, the former president also suggested using the military to go after what he called the enemy from within on Election Day.
It comes as former President Trump is deploying increasingly inflammatory rhetoric against his rival and suggesting using the military against what he described as domestic enemies.
We're at the point where he's saying, I'm going to use the National Guard and the military to take my political enemies out of the country.
But I'm talking about Donald Trump saying that he wants to use the National Guard and the military to go after the left.
He never used the word the left, but let's continue. He talked about the same. There was a woman who lost her life in January. Her life was taken. And Democrats don't care. And to Democrats, they say anyone who lost their life, who was a Trump supporter that day, deserved it. That's the way the same Democrats are who are, oh my God, outraged with Trump literally saying anyone who breaks the law, the National Guard will take care of. I don't know how Democrats can go from law and order in the Capitol to allowing mayhem and chaos throughout the country as long as it suits them.
That's what he's saying.
On the campaign trail, Trump this weekend stepping up his anti-immigrant rhetoric and suggesting he might use the military against, quote, radical left.
President and the son of the 45th president, Eric Trump. Eric, great to see you. Thank you for being here. Your reaction.
Thanks, Maria.
By the way, nothing Trump said was accurately depicted or communicated within those snippets of the stations. Everything Trump says is filtered through the most apoplectic sensibilities of usually hysterical and apoplectic, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats. I call them morally superior, highly educated, almost always apoplectic, venomous, yet wonderful and moral liberal Democrats. They're beautiful people.
Listen, my reaction is very simple. I've lived this for 10 years, Maria. I mean, it started with the dirty dossier where they made up the most unthinkable things about my father. Then they went to the Russia hoax, and that hung over my father's presidency for a 3-year period of time.
By the way, they purchased a dossier. If you're watching and you say, I can't believe H.A. Goodman would go from Bernie Sanders to Trump. Well, it's foreign policy. I wrote about why in the Federalist, why Bernie supporters should vote for Trump. Just type in H.A. Goodman Federalist. You can see my writing there. But foreign policy is the main thing. I want an anti-war president, and I want record low poverty. We have that with Trump. That's why he won the popular vote. I'm on the right side of history. You're on the right side of history if you voted for Trump. You're a Democrat, and you're wondering why you lost again. You're on the wrong side of history. Democrats stood for nothing, and they allowed all of these problems to fester. But they're not really national security concerns to the average Democratic Party voter. If you say the border, if you say endless wars overseas to a Democrat today, they'll say, so what? If you say, I'm voting Trump because of foreign policy, well, what's wrong? Biden's foreign policy was okay. No. Trump's is much better. What you are okay with in terms of chaos and mayhem on the global stage, I'm not. The morally superior choice is obviously to vote Donald Trump. That's why most of the country voted Donald Trump. You think that Jimmy Kimmel has a monopoly on morality? Very, very, very likely, and almost certainly within that industry that he's in, not only is it the epicenter of the opposite of morality, but very likely all of these celebrities, all of these people pontificating, De Niro, all of these people, You have to question why they're so against Trump when the majority of the American public voted for him, or the American electorate voted for him, even with 24/7 negative media coverage. Late night comedians devoted every second of their work to disparaging Trump, and he still won. What does that tell you?
Then they tried to impeach him the first time. Then they went after Brett Kavanaugh. Then they tried to impeach him the second time. Then they raided his home. They raided Melania's closet. They raided, Barron's room. Then they tried to take him off the ballot in Colorado. Then they tried to take him off the ballot in Maine. Then they weaponized every AG and DA in Atlanta, in New York, in Washington, D.C. to go after my father. Then you had, Page and Strzok and Comey. You had me getting 111 subpoenas. You had them ban him from Twitter, ban him from Facebook, ban him from Instagram. Then I mean, where do you want me to stop? And that's exactly what my father's talking about. That's the enemy within. You see ABC, you see 60 Minutes. They literally take Kamala Harris interviews and they edit them. They edit them to make her sound intelligent, to make her sound smart when she totally botches the questions. I mean, between the censorship and the legal lawfare and the political lawfare and the corruption and the weaponization of every political institution, there are tremendous enemies within, and there's not a single person, Maria, watching us right now. There's not a single people who haven't felt the degradation of our government and our system and our country under these people.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying in terms of the enemy from within, but what I'm saying is President Trump, and I know that you've heard your father talk about how he likes to weave. He goes to lots of different places and then he weaves in the answer to your question at the end. And here I was specifically asking him about the idea of outside agitators coming out, creating chaos on election day should it appear that he was winning. And here, I mean, the media did not even include my question. I mean, it was amazing. Sure. Outlet after outlet, they took out my question on outside agitators.
If there were roving, like, gangs or roving, like, groups of Trumpers, Trump supporters in the mold of how Democrats view them, Democrats view the majority of the electorate now, because he won the popular vote, as these, vile individuals. Imagine if the tables were turned and there were conservative or Republican or Trump supporting groups of people causing mayhem and property damage. How much you want to bet that every liberal pundit, journalist, reporter would say, send in the military, National Guard, protect democracy? Liz Cheney and Kinzinger and all of them would be, oh my God, protect us from these maniacs. But then when Trump says, hey, you know what, if there are people causing property damage and mayhem, we're going to send in the National Guard. Oh my God, authoritarian.
Entirely, and they just ran him talking about Adam Schiff or the enemy within and getting the National Guard. That's what I was
Maria,
referring to, and that was just really so incredible to me. They all
Maria,
did it.
We've seen it. We've seen these outside agitators do it. They were leaving pallets of bricks on street corners in Chicago and in New York and in Minneapolis and in Portland, all over the place. People are going up, grabbing a brick, throwing it through a store window. We've seen this. This is what they've done time and time again. There's a lot of money that does agitate elections, that does agitate for the other side, and you better believe it's a very dangerous thing.
Trump is going to start a special counsel. He's already talked about this. Kash Patel has already talked about this. With the funding, it's not difficult to find out where the funding, like, is it linked to the Democratic Party? Is it linked to organizations that are connected somehow or associated with the Democratic Party? This isn't rocket science. So these special counsels will go after criminal behavior. And it's like you keep on... There were attempts on his life. A man lost his life, was taken, a firefighter. Then they tried to imprison Trump. But see, if you create that world, you better hope, as you're creating this lawfare, that you didn't break any laws. So the same Democrats who said that Harris is going to win the popular vote in the Senate are also the same Democrats who are saying, well, there was no law breaking when we were trying to imprison Trump. There probably was. there probably was law breaking. If you're doing it for partisan reasons, and it's very easy to point that out and prove that with evidence, then you broke the law.
Eric, let me ask you about the money, because you just heard Senator Bernie Sanders talk about billionaires who are supporting President Trump. And I know that we've talked a lot about Elon Musk, but when you compare it to the billionaires on the Democrat side, what do you want to say about that? I did mention George Soros, but I'm getting lots of feedback here after that interview saying, how can you say that Republicans have all the billionaires when in fact we know it's the opposite? What do you think it is?
Yeah, well, Maria, I started laughing because I just happen to remember back to 2016 where my father funded pretty much his entire campaign because, right, he didn't have Hollywood and he didn't have those supporters, right? I think he raised $300 million and I think Hillary Clinton raised $1.5 billion, including the super PAC. So it made me kind of chuckle when he talks about how there's more money in Republican politics than Democrat. I mean, they've had all of Hollywood for years and years and years. Look at these George Clooney fundraisers where they go out and they pull 300 people and they raise $100 million. I really don't want to hear it about, too much money in Republican politics where they've won that. It's interesting where my father has done incredibly well is from people donating $12 and $19 and doing that in masses because this country absolutely adores that man right on your screen.
The working class, when Democrats or the left talk about the working class, they love Trump. The working class gave Trump a second term. I mean, this is obvious. Now, Kash Patel, I love Kash Patel. Love Kash Patel. I hope he's going to be Attorney General. I think that he's on the list to be Attorney General as one of the choices. I think very likely Trump has already chosen him. Or an intelligence agency chief. But see, running an intelligence agency is like trying to steer an aircraft carrier. It's very difficult to really change things immediately as the Attorney General. I think Kash Patel could do a lot more. But listen to this is amazing.
Let's bring in former Deputy Director of National Intelligence and former Department of Defense Chief of Staff, Kash Patel. Kash, your reaction to just the president's remarks, and he was, quite frankly, very reserved, given what has gone on today.
I think it's great to be with you guys. I think he showed extreme composure at a time when
This, by the way, was several months back, about 8 months ago.
any other American would have completely lost it. And I think that shows the brilliance of President Trump's ability to put the two-tier system of justice on display for all Americans to see in civil and criminal proceedings in state and federal court. And look, as a former federal prosecutor and a public defender, an individual who actually prosecuted and defended fraud cases, let's just lay this out as simple as we can. In order for there to be a fraud case, there has to be a fraud victim who was defrauded. And in this instance, as the president highlighted, this judge convicted him before the trial even began of this fraud and then made up monetary numbers to substantiate that judgment.
And we're not even talking about the conviction and the Stormy hush money nonsense, which might be just thrown out by the judge. So Trump won Senate, increased in the House, presidency, and the popular vote. Guess what? This man on the screen, love him, awesome. Kash Patel doesn't, he can be confirmed. We have a four-seat majority in the Senate. So he's confirmed by a simple majority vote. You might even get a Democratic senator also siding with Republicans. So every nominee is going to be easily, from what I understand, you let me know if I'm wrong. If you have that much of a lead in the Senate, every nominee will be confirmed. Then the special counsel, then the indictments take place for people who broke the law. Like when they say, well, you know, when Democratic pundits were given the argument, hey, they're going after Trump, the rebuttal was, well, he's indicted. He committed a crime. Well, then that's the same. And if anything, it'll be more evidence of crimes committed. Because going after Trump in a partisan manner is an actual crime. So when they went after Trump, they found nothing. But if you do find, in this case, that people deceived the country and trying to imprison their direct political rival, big problem.
On top of which, the president was denied a right to a jury trial because Letitia James used some statute for consumer protection fraud issues to prosecute Trump civilly that precluded him from a jury trial of his peers. So there are all sorts of constitutional issues with this, but what the American public has seen is a rigged system of justice against a political opponent of the DOJ and the state attorney general's office in New York, just like in Georgia and elsewhere, all to do one thing: rob American people of the decision at the electorate day to elect Donald Trump.
Well, you know, Cash, it's interesting watching Trump's reaction to all of this, and you noted his composure. I think a lot of people would probably be freaking out if they just opened up a bill for $355 million. But it is remarkable how what an opportunity it gives a guy like Trump that is so on brand for political purposes. He can use this, as he did just now, to break into prime time on television and make yet another statement. And who knows how many people who either don't like Trump or are on the fence about Trump, who are appalled at what they're seeing in the political process. He might have done him some good and won some voters over.
No, what about, forget the billionaires for a second. What about the pizza shop owner or the bartender or the, fashion shop owner in New York City who dares to be an America First candidate, who doesn't want his stores robbed, who wants crime tamped down? I mean, Donald Trump probably just scored slews of victories with all these individuals.
He won the popular vote. Donald Trump won the popular vote, like Kash Patel is saying, because this is the reason, okay? And I want Kash Patel to be Attorney General. I would love for Vivek Ramaswamy to be... I think Vivek Ramaswamy would be amazing at running an intel agency and have Kash Patel as the Attorney General. Vice versa. It really doesn't matter as long as you get Tulsi Gabbard, as long as you get Elon Musk, as long as you get Kash Patel, as long as you get Vivek Ramaswamy, and other. Rand Paul would be amazing. Ron Paul would be amazing. You have to get people who love the country, not people who love bureaucracy and love multinational organizations or non-governmental organizations, with everything but the country. So Democrats, their primary concern is not so a Democratic voter is a wonderful person. Honestly, I'm not trying to be, facetious. Probably wonderful, amazing person. But the border is not a concern. They don't see it as a national security concern. This is why they lost. The inflation is not a national security concern. Oil, gas, energy, not a national security concern. Ending foreign wars, not a concern. I'm not trying to be, belligerent. When people would ask me, why are you voting for Trump? And I say foreign policy, they say, so what? They don't care. The average Democratic voter doesn't care about ending endless wars. It's not on their radar. That doesn't mean that I'm morally superior or you're morally superior to them, even though they think their value system makes them superior. But obviously, ending military quagmires is the most important thing. Preventing a nuclear confrontation is the most important thing in the world. They think other things, and then they flood the country full of strategic petroleum reserves. But see, again, they have a different value system. They view national security as long as CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times, the Washington Post are happy, national security is taken care of. Even if foreign policy is a catastrophe, energy policy is a joke, and inflation is through the roof, and interest rates are through the roof, they don't care.
But look, I'm a New Yorker. I'm from Queens and Long Island. And I just saw a verdict which almost degrades New York City to the crisis we saw in the 60s and the 70s. And that's not a position I want for the town that I grew up in. But as Donald Trump laid out, this was a decision that was intentionally conducted by the elected officials in New York State. They don't care about the citizenry. They only care about the ability to control the political headlines and rob people of their safety and their right to have businesses in New York State. And Donald Trump's leading out that charge. But Charlie, as you just stated, this is speaking to people outside of New York. It's not just New York, which may be the epicenter of business and industry in America, but people across the country are saying, wait a second, if they did it there, is the rogue prosecutor in Georgia going to take this up against Donald Trump or others down in Atlanta? What about in Chicago?
Trump and the Trump Organization were banned for 3 years from applying for loans from any financial institution registered or chartered with New York State. The judge did seem to back away from a previous directive in which he appeared to order the wind down of some of President Trump's and the family's businesses. It's worth noting that Letitia James had sought to have President Trump be barred permanently from New York's business world. But this is something I want the viewers to hear. Letitia James, her goal, she campaigned on attacking President Trump. Watch this.
Zaxx packs come with 20
is above the law, including this illegitimate president. I look forward.
So how can they're okay with saying illegitimate president? So Bill Maher is always taking a task over this. And he says, well, he conceded. They conceded. No, they use the word illegitimate all the time. They call Trump an illegitimate president from day one. And they say nobody's above the law. Great. Well, nobody is above the law. Even Democrats aren't above the law.
To going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, defending your rights, and then going home.
I say one name, Donald Trump. That should motivate you.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the He's going to know my name personally.
And Cash,
will you sue him for us? Not if he's guilty of something. Not did Trump break the law. Not will you convict him for private servers that have top secret intel? Will you convict him for a laptop full of bribery and graft? Will you convict him for an illegal war? No, we just don't like him. Sue him for us. Will you sue him for us? And then they did. They went after him for everything under the sun. And they just made things up. Literally, they made things up. But they're very intelligent, so they convinced themselves they weren't making things up.
she used the statute, the executive law. It gives her rather than, the courts and grand juries giving her subpoena power, she just had the subpoena power to fish through private documents, and then she could bring a civil fraud suit for inaccurate statements discovered in the process. This law, people have never challenged it because they're afraid of the repercussions of going after an attorney general. This could go all the way to the Supreme Court on the lack of constitutionality.
Well, you're right. It's absolutely unconstitutional. It's going to get appealed. I think all the decisions and verdicts will be put on stay, as we call it. But as you showed in this video...
By the way, thank you, Democrats, for trying desperately to imprison Trump. That gave him the popular vote. See, the Democratic Party runs on vitriol, indignation, and arrogance and hubris. And that was the Republican Party 20 years ago. Don't think that I don't know that the Republicans were just as bad, possibly worse, because they began the endless wars. The Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld, Liz Cheney, Kinzinger, those types of people, although Liz Cheney and Kinzinger voted alongside Trump 90+% of the time, according to 538, which is hilarious because they're supposed to be never Trumpers. But that's where we're at as the country. But the Democrats now are running only on vitriol. Oh my God, how can you vote for Trump? Well, he won the popular vote. Do you lack intellect? Are you ignorant? It reminds me of a scene in Trading Places. It's hilarious. Well, yeah, if you know this scene, it's amazing. But anyway, are they ignorant? Do they lack intellect? I mean, if you are wondering, if you happen to stumble upon this and you're wondering why anyone would vote for Trump, maybe the problem is your lack of knowledge. Maybe you're the problem. Maybe it's not the Trump supporter who wants a better economy, low inflation, low interest rates. Maybe the Trump supporter doesn't like the fact that Biden and Harris doubled interest rates during their presidency. Maybe they didn't do it themselves, obviously. They ignored inflation, then they had the Fed raise interest rates. So mortgage rates doubled. Maybe that's a good reason not to vote Democrat. Maybe endless wars and military quagmires throughout the world with zero emphasis. If your rebuttal is, well, that's not Trump, that's not Biden's fault. Is there any emphasis on trying to end these? No, none. Not none. And I'm not talking about one in particular. I'm talking about a number of major quagmires. We didn't have them with Trump. Why were these invasions and terrible things taking place now, but not with Trump? Because Trump uses economic might and leverage. That's what the tariffs were about, that they kept. Democrats kept Trump's tariffs. They kept Trump's tax cuts. And they campaigned against them. Then you have people obsessing over Trump's personality. It's like, look, just enjoy the economy. Just enjoy the better economy and the much better foreign policy. And don't worry about Trump's personality.
As a prosecutor's code of conduct under the law, you're supposed to present the case and the facts to the law and the court without bias. She just presented herself time and time again during her campaign that the only thing she had was bias and animosity for President Trump. And her outcome was predetermined. She wanted to remove him from New York and the ballot. As President Trump said, this is all about election day interference. And here's the irony of it all. A figure like Bernie Madoff, who's an actual criminal, when he was convicted, he was barred from practicing in the securities field ever again. But no one barred him from conducting business in the state of New York. Are we to believe this decision?
By the way, New York Democrats have run the city for what, since Tammany Hall? Basically almost always since Tammany Hall. Yeah, like Giuliani, but it's mainly a Democratic-run city. It's pretty much one-party rule since the 1800s. When they say, well, Trump put out a newspaper because innocent people. Well, Kamala Harris convicted an innocent man, and also the Democrats who ran that city convicted those men. And then they blamed Trump. It was really actually the Democratic mayor, Democratic prosecutors. But anyway, the point is you have Democrats who are presiding over continual corruption. And if they broke the law, it's just just following the letter of the law, right? That's what Democrats have been saying for the longest time. But hold on, let's listen to this again.
Court without bias. She just presented herself time and time again during her campaign that the only thing she had was bias and animosity for President Trump. And her outcome was predetermined. She wanted to remove him from New York and the ballot. As President Trump said, this is all about election day interference. And here's the irony of it all. A figure like Bernie Madoff, who's an actual criminal, when he was convicted.
This is what I was going to say. There's a villain that owned an island. Do you want to know that that person was a liberal Democrat from New York, gave almost entirely to Democrats? Also, the same New York Democrats who went after Trump couldn't even impanel a grand jury for the longest time until the very end. So, I mean, you look at just the overt corruption. And then if you don't know much about politics, you say, oh my God, Trump is corrupt.
He was barred from practicing in the securities field ever again. But no one barred him from conducting business in the state of New York. Are we to believe this decision, that President Trump is somehow worse than Bernie Madoff? And this political prosecutor jackal wants to ban him from the state of New York, who he's brought millions and millions of jobs to?
Yeah.
No, the judge said, oh, he's not Bernie Madoff, that he had to evoke that fraudster's name, that con artist's name. Go ahead, Charlie.
And I think the most important thing is the thing that you said a minute ago, Dagan, and that is that all of this is happening at a time when, and you alluded to this, Cash, as well, where like you can't walk down the street in New York without, having a crime committed against you. It seems like people are raiding stores. You can't go into a store and buy something because crime is so out of control.
That's San Francisco, LA, New York. What's the common denominator? Oh, that's right, Democrats. It's one party rule.
Here, and yet you have the New York Attorney General spending, and who knows how much money she spent pursuing this case. It's got to feel like that you're in bizarro world. It's like a three-ring circus. There's not a circus ridiculous enough to even come up with an analogy to compare all of this to.
Well, I think you hit one of the main talking points that I overlooked here. Her and the mayor in Chicago have something in common. They live in their own universe of protected influence. Yeah. The security details that the taxpayers kick in the state of New York for Letitia James runs in the 7 figures. She doesn't care about the state of New York City or its everyday citizenry because she lives 1,000 feet above them with her own private security detail, cars, airplanes, and transportation. She doesn't ever go down the street and see the criminality of her own conduct.
Love Cash Patel, and if you one of my amazing viewers wants a Mitch McConnell, Mitch McConnell. I can't do Mitch McConnell anymore. I just can't do it right now. But ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. I'll be back tomorrow. Hit subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much. To my super chat, thank you. This is a new era, new dawn. The same people who said that Trump being indicted was just following the law will be the same people who say he's an authoritarian for indicting Democrats. Again, they created a world where the indictment means you broke the law. So in this case, however, there's almost certainly going to be a lot more evidence to back any criminal indictment. Anyway, give me your thoughts. Hit subscribe. Thanks, everybody. I'll